Hello and welcome back to Serendipity Intended. My name is Tracy Ann and I am so glad that you are here. It is time for another prompt in Junk Journal July, and I have to say I am excited about this prompt. Let me go ahead, slide this over just a bit. So it is day 12, and the prompt for day 12 is music. And I love music. I sang in choir when I was in high school and college. My husband plays the trumpet. All three of my adult sons played when they were in school, and my middle son actually is a conductor and clarinet player. So music is something that is super important to me and my family, and so I am super excited to jump into this prompt. I have a page picked out for the prompt, and it is this one. I chose it because, oh no, my little sticky note is stuck here. I like to tag which page I think I might use for a given prompt. So I thought this one would be fun because the colors sort of felt a little bit like music paper to me. And so it seemed like a good fit. So, actually really kind of like it that way. Okay, I do not have a plan for this other than I had in mind some of the bits and pieces that I wanted to use. And I really do think I want to use the larger clarinet. This one, although that actually, I don't know. No, I'm gonna use the larger one. Let me cut that out. All right, so first I cut it out of the book, and because I wanted to keep the image on the other side of the page and the rest of the page intact. But I noticed this little blurb here about today's standard orchestral clarinet and B-flat dates from the early 1700s. I just thought that was kind of an interesting little tidbit, and that it might be fun to include that on the page as just an extra little bit of something. So I'm gonna go ahead and tear that out and just let the edges be. I did just chop off the E a little bit, but just as a potential additional tidbit. And now I need to cut the clarinet out. I think I am going to leave a little bit of the background. That tends to be how I fussy cut things, which means I am going to end up with a teeny bit of color on the page, which wasn't what I had in mind when I started. But this channel is named Serendipity Intended for a reason. And so I'm just going to kind of go with that. So I'm not going to film cutting this out. You've seen me and probably dozens of other people fussy cut. So I'll be back as soon as I am done cutting this out. So here we go. And as you can see, there is just a hint of that background color behind it. And it doesn't really read a whole lot on the paper. It just helps it pop out from the background a bit. I love doing this. I am also going to hang on to these two pieces that were, around the outside. Actually, I guess it went this way, right? Because this color is gorgeous. And I've mentioned before that you can repeat papers throughout your journal. to create a sense of continuity, even if the color schemes on the individual pages aren't identical. It does kind of create a thread between the pages, and also because I'm doing the left-hand side, obviously I will do the right-hand side later, but using this on the opposite side is a subtle way to make the two visually connect together, even though they have different themes and they're completely different pages done on different days. So I'm going to tuck this under here to use for a later page. All right, and so now I need to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of this page. I really like this. I feel like it needs something darker behind it, maybe right here. So thinking about the rule of thirds, and I am not an art person. I've read a little bit about it, but I do know that one of the things they talk about is dividing things into thirds. So like thinking about this as a unit, and dividing it into thirds. So rather than plopping it right in the middle, kind of thinking about sort of using thirds. So I'm going to kind of concentrate my cluster between the first third and the second third, and I feel like that'll make it feel more balanced on the page than doing it right in the center, because right in the center almost makes it feel like it could sort of tilt either way. But putting it here makes it feel a little bit more grounded and attached to the page. Down here would, kind of make it feel sort of teetery. I don't know if that's an art principle or if that's just my idea, but anyway, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to sort of anchor what I'm putting in the background kind of here. And again, that's kind of why. I do think I'm going to use this additional music page for that. Now I'm going to tear this. So this is printed on just white copy paper. So I'm going to tear this so that I'm pulling up away from the side that has the printing on it. And I'm going to do that because when I do that, it's going to create a little bit of a sort of a distressed edge, and I want to see that contrast. If I tore the other way, so if I were, for example, to tear and lift the printed edge up, I would still get the tear, but I wouldn't get that white edge. So maybe you can see the difference between the two. And they both work. This one, I feel like the focus is more on the edge itself because the edge is more defined. Whereas doing it this way creates more texture along the edge without adding any extra bulk. And that's what I'm trying to do here. So I'm going to tear in both of these, pulling away from the printed side so that I end up with that white edge on both. Now I think this is technically the way it's supposed to go, looking at the clefts. However, I think this is more interesting, and I want that on the inside of the page. So I'm just going to go that route and tear off a bit, and maybe here, and maybe a little bit on an angle. Just create a little bit more. Okay, I am thinking that this is a good kind of almost there point. I do want to add a little bit of texture kind of behind this layer. And so I've got to experiment with that a bit. And I'm not quite ready to glue things down because, for example, I need to trim this, and I really do want to include that as well, maybe. Let me do that trimming and then pull some things for a little bit of texture behind, and then I'll be right back again. I still haven't pulled the texture, but I did want to show you that I've trimmed this out, and I'm going to use some of this Distress Oxide to edge this, because I did leave a little bit of white, and I don't really want to see the white on this, but edging this gives a little bit of dimension to that tag. And I'm going to leave this actually here because I might come back to that. That also helps this to stand out a little bit more. All right, so my original idea for adding texture was to use a tea bag, and I haven't abandoned that idea. I like tea bags for a couple of reasons, not the least of which is that they have some texture to them, both in the color variation from the tea staining, but also just the wrinkles. And then if you tear the edges, you get some additional texture. So that was sort of my first idea for creating some texture. The other thing that's nice about it is somewhat translucent, so you can see through to what is underneath, and that is also extremely appealing to me. I also had the idea of maybe using some dressmaker pattern paper for the same reason that it's a little bit translucent. It adds a little bit of that warmer color because this is feeling a little bit cool, and I want to offset the purple and the blue, which is a cooler color, with something a little bit warmer. So this is also an option, and I can use it as is, and it does have a little bit of texture just in the paper, or I can crumple it and then use the crumpled paper behind. So this is a second option. I also thought that I could perhaps use some just brown paper. It's not as transparent, but I could crumble it and use it. So I'm gonna look at it first from the color perspective of color and see sort of which one color-wise I think is the most interesting. And I definitely prefer this, or excuse me, the tea bag to the brown paper. I do want to use that brown paper somewhere in this journal, but I don't think it's here. And I think, again, I prefer the tea bag to the pattern paper. So kind of narrowed this down. And like I said, I do want to put it, I think, behind this layer. So what I'm going to do, because I've looked at this long enough, I'm pretty sure I'm committed to this general look. So let me grab a pencil and decide where I want this background piece to go, because so I've kind of done a little registration mark on that. And let me keep this, and I'm going to set these aside. And then I know that I want this to be here. Right, so I've sort of made a registration mark for the two papers that are going to be in the very background, and then I'm just going to kind of pick up the others and set them over to the side so that I can glue these down and have them stop kind of wiggling on the page. So give me a moment to do that, and then I will be back. Actually, before I do that, I don't want to ink the edge of this because I want to keep this white edge showing, but I do think I want this to pop out a little bit more from the background than it is on its own. So I'm gonna actually grab my black ink. This is Colorbox Wicked Black. I'm not 100% sure that you can even find this anymore. I looked for it online and I couldn't find it. It's kind of dying, and so I'm very sad because I really like this ink pad. So I'm just gonna go super lightly, but you can see the contrast, or maybe you can't. Let me just, so looking at the side that I've already inked as compared to the other side, it pulls it out just a little bit. And because I'm doing it lightly, and it also because I'm doing it on a torn edge as opposed to a cut straight edge, the edging is not as dark, not as crisp, not as clean. It feels a little bit more organic, which I think ties in really nicely with the background paper. And so I'm super happy with that. It connects it to the background paper without letting it disappear completely. And then I can go ahead and glue that down. All right, so now I am going to push pause while I glue, and then I will be back. So two things that I just wanted to share. I did use my Yoo-Hoo stick to do that gluing. I think that's more than enough to glue regular copy paper or thin paper to other paper. So that is how I adhered it. And I also wanted to point out, while I glued this piece down completely to the background paper to help connect it a little bit to the background, I left the edges of this other piece unglued intentionally, just because I find that having the edges be a little bit unglued adds another layer of texture or dimension without any extra bulk. And so I really enjoy doing that. Now, the next thing that I want to do is, I think I'm going to glue these pieces together as a unit so that they're together, and then I'll figure out what I want to do underneath. That way I can kind of play with things without having all of this constantly falling apart. liking that. And I think I am gonna go ahead and glue that down as well, because I like the additional blue. So I've kind of got 1, 2, 3 things that have that blue in them. I also like the fact that I've got a lot of things going vertically. I've got this white paper, I've got the clarinet, I've got this label, and I've got this text, and this all going up and down. So this one little piece going the opposite direction, you know, side to side, perpendicular to the other items, gives it a little bit of balance and kind of helps center or ground it. So I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bit of glue on the back here and adhere that down there. Okay, super loving this. And now I want to play a little bit with some texture in the background and see whether I like it better just like this, because honestly I'm pretty happy with this, and I could stop right here and I would be really good with what I've got. But I do want to play with just a little bit more texture and see whether this is sufficient or if I want to go a little further. So I do have my tea bag. I don't want these weird notches, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of tear that off, and I will hang on to this bit because it's definitely could be usable somewhere. I almost like this sort of rolled edge, so maybe I'll leave that, and then I don't know, we'll just tear. Let's see what happens. So if I place that underneath, that's kind of fun hanging off the edge there. I do like that, and I think it warms up the page a little bit. I lose a little bit of these notes, and I'm okay with that, because I do like the texture that it creates. And you can still see this paper underneath here a bit. So I'm liking that. I have one additional thought. Give me just a moment here. I have a container of just interesting papers, and in that container, I know you can't really see this, I've just got all these weird random bits and pieces of things, but one of the pieces that I have is this. I don't really know what this is. It feels like heavy tissue paper, but it's a little bit more fibrous than that, and when you tear it, you get these really great wispy edges. And so I was thinking that might be, it's kind of a pain to tear, but I thought that might be a really interesting contrast to have. Give me just a moment to put this away. Right. An interesting contrast to have the white as well as the brown. So it really is kind of tricky to tear. So I'm just kind of tearing it, and I'm going to work with what I have. So if I were to put that, oh wow, oh, I love this. Do you see how it extends just a teeny bit down here, but it doesn't really block because it's also fairly translucent. Oh my gosh, this is absolutely perfect. The only thing that's bugging me is I realized that I glued this down and it's not quite perpendicular. So let me fix that. Yikes, real quick. One nice thing about paper, especially thicker paper, it can be fairly forgiving. This is absolutely fantastic. I'm actually going to glue from the top down. So I'm going to just sort of lift this and put a little bit of glue there so that I can stick that where it is. I'm gonna lift the white and put a little bit of glue under there to get that stuck. Oh, no, 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 not on the front. Silly girl. And then I'm gonna glue a little bit on the back. So now all of those layers are just adhered down in that one spot. I don't really want to glue down these thin translucent pieces too much, because part of what I think is interesting about this is that they're lifted up off of the page. But I do need to make sure that it stays glued down to the page as I'm turning. So I'm mostly tacking down I am going to tack it down right here. I'm mostly tacking down the bits that are on top, and then I will get the clarinet because I don't want that moving around, and I'm going to get the bottom here as well. So if you are a person, oh, I do need to glue. Come back up, come back up. I do need to glue the whole clarinet because that middle part is popping up and it's weird. If you are a person who likes depth and texture, but not bulk, I really want to suggest to you that you consider not gluing down all of your edges, okay? Because those extra edges not being glued down, they create dimension, right? Because they're not flat. So they become dimensional and they create shadows. So there's, you know, for example, I'm looking at this, there's a little bit of a shadow behind this because it's not completely glued down. And so it allows for the light in the room to kind of play with your image and create just an additional bit of depth and texture. I am so pleased with this. There's just one more little bit of playing that I want to do, and that is to create a little bit more of that shadow effect purposely, and then let the light do the rest. So I have this General's Sketch and Watch charcoal pencil, and I'm going to just pick a few places. So for example, here where I've glued this down, so there's not going to be any shadow. And then underneath of here where I haven't quite glued down. So I'm just going to draw a little bit there and then take a teeny bit of water with my water brush. And I have several of these. This one I just use so I have water to activate the charcoal like this. It's kind of the thing I use it for. And then maybe a little bit more here, just to add some texture. And in fact, I think, I don't normally do this on wet, but I think I'm gonna continue it all the way down. The water blends the edges so that it's not quite as sharp, and creates some shading. I am not an artist. I'm not trained as an artist. And to be honest, I really don't know what I'm doing. I just kind of piddle around until I like what I see, and then I stop. I'm gonna grab this cheap lead pencil. It's got really cheap soft lead, but I'm gonna use that to add some additional pencil marks that won't blur because of the ink. So just, again, a little bit of extra texture and also some mark making. And then I think I want to add some here. So again, just let it be a little messy. And then I also want to do some here. So I'm purposely going underneath and doing it a little bit darker, because then I know I can take the water and pull it out. But then I also know that the color is going to disappear, the shading is going to disappear behind. There we go. And then lastly, I think I am going to put just a tiny bit underneath of this tea bag layer, so that that shading can spill out a bit onto the page. So maybe up here. Yeah, it's subtle. But I think it works. Okay. All right, so introduce some texture there. I am super happy with the layering and the way that this feels. The last thing that I need to do is grab my label maker and make a label for today's prompt. So let me do that, and then we'll finish this page up. So now the last thing I need to do, that I've got my label here, is decide where I want to include it. And one thing that I could do is I could incorporate it into the page itself. And so one obvious place would be to put it here and extend that sort of line this way. And I do like that. Another way would be to go, you know, sort of along here. So that's kind of interesting. And then the other alternative would be just to kind of put it down here at the bottom of the page and not make it part of the image. I'm torn between this one and this one, but I feel like up here, this almost becomes as important as the clarinet, and I don't really want it to be. So I think I am gonna trim this just a tad because it feels a little too long. And I'm just gonna put it down here so that I have my label, but I am not necessarily making it a part of the actual page. It's really just serving as a label down here at the bottom. All right. So yeah, I think that's fantastic. I hope you can see some of the texture. I'm really pleased with the layering and how everything kind of worked out. I love the colors, even though that is not what I was expecting when I started. But all in all, a pretty satisfying day. I hope that you enjoyed watching me create and maybe creating alongside with me. Either way, I hope that you make an absolutely great day. Goodbye.